Nani Darwish grew up being taught to hate at home, at school, and in her religion. Then she learned the truth and rejected Islam. She's with us to tell us how jihad now threatens America.
Now, what is jihad? We hear this phrase all the time in the news. What exactly does this mean?
Jihad is a religious holy war against non-believers.
Non-believers in Islam?
Yes, in Islam. And it's taught as a permanent war institution against Jews, Christians, and pagans.
So your father was killed in the name of jihad then. Tell me about that.
My father headed the Egyptian military in Gaza to actually try to destroy Israel. And Israel wanted to kill my father. They had several attempts on his life. And one night, a few months before my father was killed, Israeli commandos managed to come into our heavily guarded home. But they only found women and children. And they left us unharmed. A couple of months later, my father was assassinated in the first targeted assassination in Gaza in 1956.
And you were 8 years old at the time.
I was 8 years old at the time.
All right, so your mother then is raising 4 little girls and a little boy by herself.
Exactly.
What does that mean in Islam?
There is very little respect for a home run by a woman. And she became extremely depressed because of all the restrictions that existed at that time to women's going out. A woman is not allowed to date or have even fun without a husband.
So really your mom's life ended
Yes.
at the same time.
It
She was
ended.
not allowed to really have her own life. And doesn't Islam set up this system
Yes.
through polygamy, through violence toward women? Explain that.
Controls women's liberties. It's very oppressive for women. And for example, it gives the right for a man to marry up to 4 women. The Muslim marriage contract by itself is unfair for women because in it men have 3 more spaces to fill out by 3 more women.
That's just hard to believe, and that sets up the women against each other. True?
Exactly. And this is something that's so common in the Middle East, that women are very hostile to each other. They don't trust each other. They don't form organizations to better themselves or have common causes to fight for. And this is all because of the problem of polygamy. And polygamy, even though not every Muslim man, of course, has a 2nd or 3rd or 4th wife, but it's quite common.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's in the back of the mind of every Arab woman, every Muslim woman, that in time of trouble, my husband can solve a problem by marrying somebody else without even my knowledge.
So there's no solid family structure.
There is no solid family like the Judeo-Christian family structure, which is 1 man, 1 woman. A marriage is regarded as a holy matrimony between 1 man, 1 woman.
Well, there was an interesting twist that happened that really led you out of this life and has led you onto the path that you are. And after the break...
Well, is the Islamic faith a threat to our nation? Well, one woman says she knows Muslims living here in America who are intent on changing our political and religious beliefs to those of the Quran.
We're back now with Nani Darwish. She's the author of Now They Call Me Infidel, an amazing story. As a child of an Egyptian officer in Gaza, your father was martyred for the cause of jihad, which is the holy war. Now, what was so fascinating to me is after that time you ended up in a Catholic school as opposed to the teaching that you had growing up. How did that happen and how did that change your life?
My mom wanted to give us good British education, and at that time the British had just left Egypt, but still some of the schools that they established in Egypt existed. So I was taught by British nuns, and I saw an aspect of Christianity that was very different from the way I was taught. It was more peaceful, there was more love, There was more tolerance, compassion.
What had you been taught up until that point, and what are the Islamic schools teaching young kids?
There's cursing of the infidels and cursing of the Jews almost all the time at the end of the sermon. May God destroy the infidels and the Jews, the enemies of God. We'd hear that very common, and believe it or not, it used to sound normal.
It sounded normal.
It sounded normal because when you grow up on it all the time, you think this is right.
This is in the textbooks, isn't it? I mean, this is in the textbooks. This is what they learn.
It's in the textbooks. It's in the preaching of holy men in the mosque. There is something every American must understand, after 9/11 especially, that there is nothing that America has or has not done that causes terrorism. Terrorism is violent jihad, and it's the duty of every Muslim, and that's why many Muslims are silent, because they feel if they speak against terrorism, then they must be speaking against jihad. And that's why they have a conflict to speak out. And that's why Americans should never doubt their own value system or their own country or their even own foreign policy.
Well, you make a good point, too, because after 9/11 and after some of the horrible things that we've seen on the news with the killing of Daniel Pearl, the journalist, we think, is it something about us? Why do they hate us so much? Why are we this great enemy? And it really is just...
No, it is, we have an open system and they have a closed system. Their existence here is the right to Islamize us. That's how they view us. They are here because they feel they want to Islamize us. And they give us no access into their country. Absolutely. They consider non-Muslims as filth on their land. It's called negas. And that's why when our soldiers, American soldiers, went to feed the hungry in Somalia, instead of being appreciated, these people were starving by their own government, Muslim against Muslim brutality. And America was in Somalia not because they want to occupy Somalia, they wanted to feed the hungry. And what did we get for this? We didn't get a thank you from a Muslim world or from the Arab street, but our soldiers were dragged and tortured and killed.
What led you from the Islamic faith then to the Christian faith?
It was a long journey. It wasn't easy because we grew up on shaming. In the Arab world, it's a culture of pride and shame. So we could not even think of even opening a Bible or looking at any other word other than the Quran. So when I moved to the United States, I suddenly discovered that most of what I learned were propaganda. I befriended Christians and Jews, and when I was among my Christians and Jewish friends, I always heard the word shalom, compassion, forgiveness, love. But that was total contrast from what I grew up with. When I was among my Muslim friends, even in America, we would hear things like, even if Israel, it takes us 100 years, we still want to destroy it. We're in America to spread Islam.
Well, let's talk about that too, because we hear about the the Muslim mosques in America and think, no big deal, it's just practicing religion. But it really is a breeding ground for terrorism, isn't it?
It's true. A lot of people think Islam is just a religion. There is a major part in Islamic education, or even the main part, is conquering the world to Islam. It is the utmost honor for every Muslim to believe in jihad, and it's done through jihad, through the sword actually. And if you look at the Saudi flag, it has a sword on it, and it's the symbol of opening countries through the sword. Opening countries through the sword.
Do Americans get this?
No.
Why not?
Because we judge everybody by our own value system. We have to understand that we have an open society, an open democracy. We give access to all nations into our country, in America, but we have no access into the Arab world, into the Middle East. they come here and they are welcomed as citizens right away. They open their mosques. They preach even violence and jihad. When I attended 2 mosques in America after I moved here, I was told we are not here to assimilate in America. We are in America to spread Islam and to change the Constitution of the United States to the Quran.
And now you're in America and traveling the world to spread the truth. And Nani, we appreciate you being here. Once again, this is a book that everybody has to read. I couldn't put it down. It's called Now They Call Me Infidel, Why I Renounce Jihad for America, Israel, and the War on Terror. It will open your eyes. It will help you understand the psychology of what's behind this